Hi, I'm Lucinda Joseph. In the studios with me is Ann Olson, who's a U.S. trainer who's been meeting lots of people and traveling around the world. She's been talking to journalists and giving her lecture series, and she's here in Malaysia. Thank you, Ann, for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Could you start off by telling us a bit of your background and your interest in media development?
I started out as a journalist in America, working as a reporter and editor for small, medium, and large-sized newspapers. Well, traveling overseas at one point, realized there was a lot of opportunity to work with media in other countries, and finally shifted into that in the middle 90s and started working overseas. Moved to former Soviet Union, moved to Russia. Did a lot of work in that country, and then moved to Southeast Asia. So been in, for the past 10 years, instead of working as a journalist, working as a trainer of trainers, and working with journalists to bring up their levels to more international standards to try to help spread freedom of information, freedom of speech around the world.
Okay, and you're here in Malaysia to talk to students, to talk to media people,
to talk to journalists
about the development of mainstream media and the digital challenge. Can you tell us a little bit about your lecture series here?
Well, I've got two different presentations. One focusing on how the internet, new media, how they are influencing journalism, the practice of journalism, especially in the United States, because that's really my area of expertise. And I think that what we're seeing is that the impact of the internet is really coming home in the United States, and it's really having a huge influence on the way journalists do their job, but especially on the way that audiences expect information. So we're seeing, I think that we're really in the middle of an information revolution, somewhat like the Industrial Revolution that changed the shape of the world. And the way that news is packaged, the way that even the definition of information is changing. And so trying to look at that, trying to bring those ideas to show other people how the internet is going to change the way that they do their work, change the way that people expect to have information delivered to them. The other presentation is focused on politics because, as you know, we're in the middle of a pretty historic U.S. presidential race in the United States, and the internet's having a huge impact, I think, on the way that that race is being perceived, the way that information about the campaign is being presented, and also a large impact on the way that people are getting involved in politics, seeing, their opinions about politics. And so basically, for almost all the work that I'm doing here, the internet is the prism for the conversations that I've been having with people, and the kind of the driver of change in the United States. And I'm trying to show and help people understand the impact of that. So I've got these two presentations. I've spoken in large and small lecture situations. I've also sat with journalists and just had basically conversations about how things are happening in the United States, and helping them understand kind of the level of change and what's happening, and met some really interesting journalists who have really good and strong questions, because I think that here in Malaysia, people are seeing a huge change in access to information.
And the internet is the new future, as they say. So tell us a little bit about the changes that's happening. How is the mainstream shifting in America? And you did talk about some papers being, laying people off and being extinct. Right. Are we saying that the papers are not going to exist anymore?
Well, who knows? So whoever really knows would be making a lot of money right now. I think one of the main changes is that what we're seeing is that the way the internet works is really affecting the way that journalists do their work. That it's not just enough to write stories, take pictures, do graphics, that the interactivity of the internet is really shifting requirements for how journalists do their jobs. And so we see reporters who sit online and talk to readers, who answer questions about their stories after they're published, who go on, who do instant chats online with readers who expect to have access. That's what the internet is really changing, that people have access to information in new ways and expect to have access to journalists in ways that they've never had it before. So we see a shift in how personal news is. We see a shift in the speed of news, how quickly how quickly news cycles, how quickly we get public figures reacting to public news, other public figures reacting to public figures. So we get kind of this huge spin and speed on the news cycle. That the news cycle is much faster than it used to be. We see the way that the platforms for news, that people are online, that streaming videos, instead of a reporter filtering an interview, giving you information from their point of view, from their perspective, a reporter deciding what's important and what should go in a story, you get the actual interview yourself. And as a viewer and a listener, you can decide what you think is most important instead of having the journalist be the filter for you. I think that's a really big shift.
Well, integrity, my concern has always been about reporting and the integrity of our news, and that's been the core business. How is that shifting with this instant, do you have time to do the research, and how would people believe in our source then?
Well, and I think that that's one of the huge parts of the change, that people like to be able to go online, choose the information that they get, find the source that they want, listen to the voice that they want to hear, or even to, listen to the point of view that reaffirms their point of view, reaffirms their opinion. So what we're getting, I think, is audiences that are even becoming more polarized by this kind of information because it's more opinion-based instead of fact-based. And so one of the things that I think that we're going to have more public conversations about is the concept of media literacy and how that needs to become part of our education system, that people need to be educated about what kind of information to trust, why it's trustworthy, what makes it trustworthy, what's the difference between fact and opinion, what's the difference between a reporter who's gotten the facts for you and a blogger who's given you his viewpoint on the facts. And so I think that this is going to create a huge drive for new educational systems that help people really really begin to understand, is this opinion, is this fact, where did it come from, how do I decide, how do I know, how do I parse opinion from fact, and how do I become better informed instead of just get more noise in my head instead of actual information in my head. So I think that trying to figure out how do we keep giving people authoritative information when people can get any kind of information they want. It's a freer world, and I think what we're going to see is a shift in how information gets delivered. In the United States, we're seeing media, mainstream media, move away from the mass audience toward the niche audience. Specially designed information delivered to people who have specific interests in specific hobbies, specific professions, people who are ready to pay for and get information that's deep and valuable instead of kind of the surface opinion, very not very deep information. But I think the models are changing in that we're in the middle of a revolution, and where we're going to go isn't really clear right now. It's a very interesting time.
Very interesting. Let's talk a bit about the election campaigns. How is the media playing it up in the U.S. now?
Well, what we're seeing is a lot more, because of the influence of the internet, because of the influence of of television being the constant commentator. We're seeing a lot more information that is partisan. We're seeing a lot more people who have a point of view, who are kind of being commentators and observers. What's interesting, I think, is that where there's a proliferation of these observers and commentators on the internet, on television, what we're also seeing is the candidates using this instant medium, the internet, to reply, to come back, to try to authenticate their own campaigns and to answer to these more opinionated, more partisan commentators. So, Barack Obama has a smear response team, that goes right to work. The minute they see something that they don't like, they've got it up online, they're responding to it, they're reacting to it, they're providing a different set of facts. So this access that the public has is also available to the candidates. And so the candidates are using the internet in the same way that people go for the same reason people go to the internet, that they can put up their own version, that they don't rely on the mainstream media, that they're not waiting for the mainstream media to correct itself. Okay. They're not waiting, they're not begging a newspaper to write the more accurate story or the television to change its slant. They're using the internet as a tool themselves. And so that's also changing people's perception of the race. And so you can go to the McCain site, you can go to the Obama site, you could go to the Hillary Clinton site, you could get a lot of information, you could, find out a lot on your own without having the filter of a journalist or somebody else giving it to you in the way that they want to give it to you. Mm-hmm. So that access is really changing the actual tenor of the campaign.
Mm-hmm. We had an election in March recently, and there's been a lot of talk on how the new media had changed the way things are done here. Would you say it's a similar situation there?
Oh yes, very much so. Very much so.
Where the new media is spearheading the campaigns abroad?
Well, I think one of the things that's different, maybe slightly different for us, is that there's a somewhat, the bloggers are actually seen as opinionators, not fact providers. Okay. And what we see is that the mainstream media has moved full force onto the internet to try to continue to be the main purveyors of information. But even so, bloggers are still reacting. They're not out collecting information. They're not out doing the primary reporting. They're reacting. They're telling what they think. They're saying, they're talking about what they think, not necessarily what they know. And so we still see kind of the mainstream print publications providing the bulk of information, that people are still getting the main facts from that, and that bloggers are reacting to those facts and providing perspective on those facts or point of view, but that the main kind of information is still coming from journalists in America. Okay. Although people are reacting to those journalists, commentary on websites, people being able to post their reactions to stories. So you're getting this whole different level of a political conversation, a political discourse in the United States that itself is becoming a topic of conversation. Does the internet promoting civil discourse, or is it allowing angry, not very well informed people to say what they think and not what they know? It's a really interesting time in the United States, very different campaign in a very pivotal election for us, at a very important time.
Okay, on that note, I just want to say thank you for your time, thank you for your insights. Thanks for watching. I'm Lucinda Joseph. Thanks, Anne. Thank you. I had to wrap it up. Sorry, it was great.